Our Ericson 32-3 sailboat has two opening hatches, one forward of the mast over the V-berth and the other aft of the mast over the main salon. This hatch has over time developed a leak, which was getting various parts of the interior wet, especially during a heavy rain. Stopping even the smallest leak into the boat is important because it can add to or create a mildew problem, among other things. So the top part of the hatch had to be removed from the boat so that it could be rebuilt, but that would leave a large opening which had to be covered while the repairs were done. So the first order of business was to make a temporary hatch cover. I used some leftover gray paint and then back at the marina applied a self-adhesive rubber strip that would help with the sealing of the temporary hatch. Back inside the boat, I screwed 4 3/8-inch diameter all-thread pieces into each of the 4 T-nuts that I hammered into the cover. Then I slipped the 2x4 brace in and bolted them tight using the wing nuts, sandwiching the cabin top between the cover and the brace to make a watertight seal. Those long threads had to be shortened. Well, here finally sits my Lewmar Super Hatch, and the reason I took it off is because it was leaking. And it was leaking pretty much along these edges right here, especially this starboard side. I can feel a line, along this line here rather, the plexiglass actually comes up and goes back down. And upon closer examination, especially with the magnifying glass, there's a space there. And if I push on this plexiglass, it actually moves a little bit. So that is probably why it's leaking. So this has to be rebuilt. And the first thing to do is to take off all the hardware, the hinges, and especially, of course, the solar vent, and then start scraping out the old caulking. I also have a new piece of plexiglass, so we'll be replacing that too. Here I found an awl that was the perfect tool to start with in removing the old caulking. Now here you can really plainly see the scratches in the plexiglass, the original lens. And what caused that? When this was on the boat and the new solar vent was in place, I had a hatch cover made out of canvas, and it was basically to keep the light out and the heat down in the hot afternoons on the Chesapeake Bay. And believe it or not, just it being on there, it actually, over time, I guess from dirt or whatever, where it came in contact with the plexiglass, it actually ended up scratching it. And when you look up at it in the sun, when the cover is off, it's very noticeable, as you can see. Got all the caulking taken off the frame, and that wasn't too bad. Actually, it was fairly easy to do. I recommend having a number of tools, a X-Acto blade or some kind of utility knife, a thin screwdriver, slotted screwdriver, some wire brush, small wire brush you can get in there and scrape out the rest of the caulking. And I was very careful not to damage the gasket, the original gasket that's in here, because I think they're unavailable. And there wasn't really any reason to change it. The gasket looked like it was in pretty good shape. That allowed me to use the old lens as a template. I labeled the hatch lens aft, forwards, port and starboard, and the top. And also I laid out the center lines and the outside rough dimension of the hatch in the new 1/2 inch smoked gray plastic. And I got that from a company called eStreetPlastics.com, and they're in Texas, and they're pretty good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to line this old lens up with the two cut edges, since they're already cut, and then I'm going to use a router to route out the outside, the rest of the outside perimeter along with the curves here. And also I'm going to use a router to route the holes, these two big holes for the locking clamps. And I'll use these holes here, which are the holes for the hinge, drill through them right into the new piece. Of course, this will all be clamped together while I'm doing it so nothing moves. So here we have the setup. This is the plexiglass, the new plexiglass, which is in place, which is sandwiched with the old plexiglass. And sides match up. These clamps are to hold the whole assembly to the work table so that when I start routing, things don't move around. So let's get to routing. So for routing, I'm using a battery operated router with a relatively small bit on the end. Okay, and it's got a wheel that will follow the perimeter of the old lens, which I'm using as a template. This is the top piece. This is the template on the bottom. And I take my router, a little wheel on it, and you can see it is raised enough to follow the piece at the bottom. So what's that they say about the best laid plans? My original plan was to use the cordless router to cut the plexiglass. And evidently the 1/2 inch thick plexiglass is a little much for this little guy. And I was blowing through batteries, my lithium batteries, like crazy. So I decided to ditch it. And I'm going to be setting up with my old trusty Craftsman 1.5 horsepower plug-in router. But unfortunately what happened in the meantime also is that, I don't know if you can see it, the little wheel that is a guide wheel for this little router blade which I was using spun off. It's gone. It kind of chewed up the side of the plexiglass a little bit. It's not bad. I'm pretty sure I can use the new piece. But the template's got some gouges in it. I'm only halfway through the cut here. So I decided to get my other blade, other bit rather, which has a bigger wheel. and to mate that up with my Craftsman 1.5 horsepower router and finish the job. So let's try it again. Now that the lens is cut, it's time to think about mounting it in the frame. And this is a close-up of the frame for the hatch and the gasket that goes around. It's flat through here, and it's about the same height as the metal part on the frame. But right here, there's a lip. So there is a gap. The glass would sit on that, okay, like that. And you can see that there's going to be a gap between the top of that little lip and the metal frame and the top of the gasket. So to remedy that, I'm going to lay a section of butyl tape down. I'm a fan of butyl tape. I love this stuff. I don't think it works for everything, but I think in this case it's going to do a pretty good job. The only problem is it's wider than I really need, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to trim it down so I can get it to fit in that area between the lip here and the edge of the frame. And then the lens, the glass, will fit, lay down on that. I'll compress it down a little bit, okay? It'll kind of hold it in place, and it'll keep it stable while I put caulking between the edge of the glass and the frame. So what I've done, I've taken the tape, the butyl tape, and sliced it right down the center. It's 3/4 of an inch wide, but 3/8 will be plenty to work with. Taking it and laying it right in the corner. Just going to lay this right down in there. And that'll be enough to lift it up to that lip. If you ever work with butyl tape, it's a little sticky. So it's kind of hard to manage, but you can do it with a little patience. Okay, so here's the assembled hatch cover with the new glazing, and I put the hinges on, and I used the same Dow 795. I dry fit the hinge on first, taped it out so I wouldn't get any 795 on the glazing. Took it off, put the glazing down, put it back on, screwed it together. Of course, it seeped out, and then I carefully pulled the tape off. Pretty much the way I did it for the caulking around the outside perimeter. Okay, and the reason I can't lay this down flat is because I have the vent on now, and as you can see, the bottom sticks out. Now all that's left to be done is to put it all back on the boat. So, but I'm pretty happy. I would probably do things a little differently, of course. Second time around, you always do. It's certainly something that should be within your abilities if you're okay with using hand tools and a caulking gun. Next stop, see what it looks like on the boat. Oh, I'll do it to that one. Okay, we got the hatch cover down, locked in, but for some reason this one section is keeps popping out, and you can see the washer's loose here. I suspect what's going on is that the threads for this screw, there's a plastic insert in here in the Super Hatch handle, and I think they're stripped. So I'm either going to have to find another one, which is probably going to be impossible, or I'll fill it with epoxy and re-drill the threads. But for now it's working. This one seems to be okay. Well, here's how I solved the problem of the latch for the Lewmar Super Hatch, which is of course not being made anymore. And if you went on the Lewmar website, you'll see that none of the parts are being made, or very few are being made for the Super Hatch. You might be able to get some hinge parts for the from Hatchmasters, but the latches and all the parts are not being made anymore. So this is not my hatch that I just installed. This is a hatch I bought from Bacon Sales, which is, if you're not familiar with Bacon Sales, they're a great place in Annapolis. If you're ever in Annapolis, you might want to stop by. They have used consignment parts and bits, all sorts of things for sailboats and basically even power boats. And one of the things they had in stock was Lewmar Super Hatch. Now, this one's smaller than mine, but it uses the same latching mechanism. And this thing cost me 80 bucks, which is probably a lot to pay for a latch handle. But since they don't make them anymore, and the alternative would be to actually install a brand new Lewmar hatch, which would cost somewhere around 1,300 bucks. This was a bargain. So the problem here was that this piece, which goes on the outside of the hatch and protrudes through the holes, you're looking at the inside here, is stripped a bit. Screws in here. Okay. So I just needed really this part. This part essentially cost me 80 bucks. But in the bargain, I got replacement parts because the other hatch latches here. And I have another hatch, which I think might be the same size as my forward hatch, but I'd have to check. So there it is, my rebuilt Lewmar Super Hatch. Now leak-free, I hope. My rebuild cost me a lot less than sending it off to Hatchmasters, and certainly less than a brand new replacement. I hope you learned something with this video, and as always, this is the way I did it, and I'm not telling you that you need to do it the same way. The next project is making new cushions. That's right, new cushions for the sailboat. After getting an estimate of $15,000, that's right, 15 with 3 zeros, I'm making this using the Sailrite machines and the Sailrite assistants and products, but that's going to be another video, so stay tuned for that one.